Moving on to the other part of the conversation where I really wanted to understand, like, one of the talking points was that domain trained AI. What does exactly mean, and how does it actually work, like from say point A to point Z?
Okay, so I'll take a simple example that is often used in banking, right? Which is that for many different purposes in banking, people create a company profile. That they will, in my example earlier with a deal, you might just create several, but if they were making a lending decision, for instance, then as part of that lending decision, they'll often create a sort of single page or multi-page company profile. Now, for that, they will gather some data about the company. They will analyze that data, create a fact sheet. They will review that fact sheet, put into a standard format for that organization, and then pass that profile on to the decision maker, which they may be themselves, but maybe a lending specialist or otherwise. Now, that company profile creation, we start off with some data. You pull it together from many sources. You analyze it. You produce an output. Then it gets reviewed. That sort of end-to-end process is something that an agentic AI solution would be very strong at. Likewise, in a bank, if you're doing credit underwriting, then again, this time it'd be analyzed by a credit analyst. It'd be slightly different data that you bring in. You would ultimately go on to review and approve the application and then generate a credit report. Again, a sort of process that's faster, better, smarter with an agentic AI. There's a type of process that all the banks often use called spreading. It's when you actually take company financial reports and you extract all the financial data out of it, produce a lot of ratios about the organization, and then use that again to make a decision that it could, again, be an investment decision, or it could be a lending decision, it could be for variety of purposes. Again, these are the sorts of processes that agentic AI can do really powerfully, very high levels of automation with a lot of intelligence built in. Now, take that example of spreading, and to bring what I was saying earlier about the specialists, right? But companies in the US in particular will often restate their financials between the quarterly reporting and then the annual reporting. You want an agent that's actually smart enough to be able to deal with these restatements. Or in the balance sheet, there'll be a line saying current liabilities, and 20 pages later, there'll be a note that breaks out those current liabilities into several further rows. You want an agent that's smart enough to be able to relate back that detailed breakout to the original line that it relates to in what is actually a PDF file. And that's what we train the AI agents to become specialists at. So these specialist agents can handle all the nuances that are in these processes that a bank or other firm have to manage today. Now, we're in a very good position to understand those nuances because we've got 6,500 people who've spent decades doing this sort of work for their living, and they understand and deal with these nuances every day. So we use our analysts to train our agents how to do this workflow in a way that's really cognizant of what's needed in the work environment for a bank. And that level of domain expertise is what makes our agentic AI solution unique. Others have brought in great sort of data science. They may have brought in a great technology. They may be super smarts in a garage in California, but actually they don't necessarily understand exactly how a bank carries out some of these processes. We bring that domain expertise, and we've combined that with our super smarts. They are very intelligent data scientists based out of Bangalore to build these agentic solutions. They were some of the sort of banking examples. The company in research and would be another one in banking. If you sort of flip that over to say private markets firm, then when they're screening for targets to acquire, then they will define their criteria. They will source lots of data from databases and external sources in industry associations. They will then assess that. They want to validate the information. They want to then publish it into a common format, critique it, use their sort of decision-making criteria, apply it to it, score and rank those companies, and ultimately, therefore, come up with a short list that they want to screen. Right? So that's target screening. They will do company profiling in the way that I described for the bank. When they come to do due diligence, they'll take a virtual data room, all the information about a company, they're pulled together with lots of effort, and then they use the agents to look across all that data and to be able to answer questions about it, to be able to pull report dates together in the way they want, and to be able to publish their due diligence reports to produce these insights, assessments, and to be able to go deeper. And likewise, when they're looking at their borrowing base, the similar process, or when they're reporting back to their investors, their LPs and GPs, again, they can use these different agents to bring the data together, produce the reports, validate the data, publish in the right format, and then send out in a personalized way to the recipient. So all these different workflows become highly automated. And it could be that there's some elements of it that are not just about producing an output, but for instance, in the lending process, if there's lending application and the agent has created a credit score, and that's a good score that meets the criteria, then an agent could then write an email to the customer saying, congratulations, please click on this link to digitally sign for your loan. It could send an email to the worker, that's the employee, to say, good news, your customer's been approved. And it could go onto an agent could go onto a system and check that this, ticking that this customer has now been approved. And so, all that process of writing an email, reading the response, going to a system, updating it, well, that's the heavy lifting, the boring bit, these agents can do. So they can do quite a wide range of different activities, at working as a little team with an overall planning agent that's pulling it all together. So hopefully that gives you some sense of some of the workflows.
Right. So when you mentioned, say, finance and everything, right? From what I've seen, like especially in India, and you can see the geopolitical situation, finance and the economy are the most regulated and unfortunately also very unpredictable industries, right now. So in this kind of situation, like this given socio-economic situation that is happening, and given the regulations that keeps changing on the go, and in India we have seen so many fintech companies come and crash just because of one fine regulatory changes happening. So in that kind of scenario, how do you see the kind of efforts you are making, say in the agentic AI or domain trained AI? How does it also adapt to these kind of regulatory things?
It's a good question, and regulation, particularly in the financial services space, will always be at the heart of much of the way that much of the considerations are needed here. I think there's multiple levels of response to the question. I think organizations will have their own sort of policies and procedures to make sure that they are using AI wisely, avoiding any bias, and making sure that ethically they're considering what needs to be done. What are the guardrails? How do we ensure that we don't go too far? Protect people's data, etc. So there'll be a starting position that the organization will have that can be used to demonstrate to a regulator that they're entering into this in a very mature, considered way. So that's number one. I think the second point is that the one of the things that's maybe stopped more adoption of agentic AI in financial services to date has been the fact that you couldn't 100% rely on the outputs. And therefore, whilst it gave you some productivity improvement, if you sort of lost that, having to check everything that was being produced, then you didn't gain very much. How worthwhile was it? As the agentic solutions give you higher levels of efficiency and automation, and they give you these quality assurance agents that do more of the checking for you and highlight to you where you should now focus your checking, that means that the solutions will become more prevalent. And because we're still saying that the human needs to be in the loop, that they own the output, the human will still do the thinking, the interpreting, the deciding. The agent would do the heavy lifting in between. And so we're not taking away from the person making that decision. There are analysts actually today. That's their role as they look forward, is less heavy lifting, more insight and value add. And we're saying is that the decisions are being supported by this due process. And because the agentic process has now got this validation step within it, and the human still has got to validate, and we make sure the processes include them validating, I don't think we brought any more risk into the process just because we use agentic. Now, then the third element is actually understanding those regulations is actually a great use case for agentic AI. You get these very complex regulations that come through for a bank. It's the different Basel regulations or the capital adequacy regulations. They're often very long, very complex. Determining your compliance for a particular decision in the organization against those regulations, that's actually a great use case for agentic AI. They can read the regulations, they can read what you're proposing to do, they can highlight to you any ways that there could be a risk of being non-compliant, and otherwise they could write a compliance report for you. Again, the human made the final decision, but actually the agents have made it much easier for the humans. So I would say the efforts of being consistent with regulations, of making sure that we respond to them in an appropriate way becomes easier. But there is some considerations that need to be put in place to make sure that the environment in which we're using this AI is wise, right? It's not we're not bringing undue risk into the organization.
I'd like to, take our conversation to make it about India, right? And so I want to understand like how much closely you have followed the tech evolution in India in the last, say, decade, and what are your key takeaways? Like, where do you see the countries? It would be great if you can give an honest assessment.
Very happy to. The solutions that I'm describing to you, we develop out of a team of 150 in Bangalore. They are very, very strong. They lead the way, I think, technically, and in terms of their understanding of the industry and applying that understanding and the technical knowledge together. I spent 3 decades in IBM, and the vast majority of my workforce in IBM was based out of India. I've got huge respect for the talent that we used in IBM in India and that I use today. The majority of the Acuity workforce is based out of India. So I think that India is in a fantastic position. I think the sort of the whole cultural aspects of how important knowledge working is, the whole cultural aspects of how important education is, I think puts India in a fantastic position to continue to be a major force in terms of the development of AI and in terms of the developing solutions for clients. I think the sort of whole services and professional services industries will continue to prosper out of India. And I really do see it as a major opportunity for economic growth. And I expect this India employees and citizens to respond very well to it. So I see great opportunity and look forward to being part of that.
So what is happening at the moment is that, within India, there is a lot of FOMO that, when the China's DeepSeek came, and everybody was rightly asking why India hasn't built its own, why are we lagging behind in this space? So, according to you, what could be the possible reasons? Like, India couldn't, despite the being the back-end office of the IT back-end office of the world, despite such a giant IT industry, we are kind of behind, say, global companies or the economies in terms of developing our own AI. And now the kind of gap is just continuously increasing, right?
Yeah, I suppose I've worked a lot in the US in my career, and I've seen in recent years the levels of investment that some of the US firms have made in this space. Right, you've only got to look at where the global powerhouses of AI sit. The likes of NVIDIA or Microsoft or Amazon and Google. They sit often in Silicon Valley, but they certainly sit based out of America. So they've invested very heavily, and they've got a great position from those investments. If I contrast that to, say, the UK, where I sit, then we've made less investment in the UK. We don't we have got some stars, that have come through in the UK, and we've got some great industries, but we haven't sort of got our own major large language model companies sort of fighting for dominance with the cloud providers, for instance. So I think that there is an element of that countries need to invest heavily if they want to sort of lead the way. But I suppose the good news I see in it for both India and for the UK here is that the large language models are becoming a little bit more sort of commoditized. They're becoming a sort of something where it's actually quite hard to differentiate and compete with each other. Whereas actually the competition becomes about how we then use those large language models to do something that's more specific to an industry, to a use case, to a domain. And actually, that's what Agentic AI is all about. It's about then the next generation. And so, AI is moving so fast. Maybe neither UK nor India did as much in the last wave. I don't know, but I think that's probably right. But actually, there's nothing stopping both India and UK, for instance, competing and leading in the next wave. And so I think there's everything to go for and nothing to fear, I would say. And sort of the grounding of things like great education and attitude and towards professional services will be a good starting point.
So one of the things which is like, India has long battled this that India is a consumer market, not a builder's market or creator market. What would actually truly take, to shed that kind of image? Because in India, we have seen a lot of government-run campaigns, say Make in India campaign is there, like to Skill India, Startup India. So we have these campaigns, there is a lot of self-realization that we need to be self-dependent in a lot of aspects, whether it's in IT, whether it's tech, whether it's different kind of manufacturing or assembly, or whether it's tech production. But still that kind of manufacturing, the kind of there's a bit of stigma, and I see a lot of people kind of have made peace with it that India is not going to be a creators market. It will just be a consumer. Like say, one of the big analogies that we get is like we don't have our own Facebook. We are Facebook's one of the biggest markets, but we don't have our own way Facebook, and this is in stark contrast with China. So, what are your thoughts about it?
Um, so I suppose I wouldn't claim to be an expert on the Indian market. I should be clear on that. So it's probably better for me to maybe comment on what is it about, for instance, the US market that actually has allowed them to lead the way, right? And then maybe we can sort of that points to some of the gaps, perhaps, right? So in the US, there's a sort of cultural element in the US about how exciting and positive it is to be an entrepreneur that takes risks and sets up their own organization and blazes the new paths, right? Culturally, that is something that is sort of it's something that teenagers feel and people come out of university feel and 20-something-year-olds feel, and they want to go and be that sort of business champion on that journey. They probably do that better than anyone else in the world. Then you've got the whole sort of private equity, venture capital, the fundraising side. That is particularly strong in the US. And I don't think it's as strong in many other markets. It's not as strong in the UK. It's probably not as strong in India, I suspect. That venture capital, private equity, and moving people through the scaling of a business and putting seed money in, that is hugely important. Without it, you can't take a great concept and grow it. And so there might be as many people with great concepts that would flourish and lead the way and dominate the market globally. In UK and in India, but if we haven't got the structure around it to allow them to flourish, then I think it's always going to be hard, right? Some will make it almost despite the structure, but actually many will sort of be overtaken by someone that came with an idea later, but was based out of Silicon Valley, where all of this was. And then even just, I suppose, some of the talent. There's a lot of, in Silicon Valley, in California, there's a lot of people who've worked for these different startups, and they have the mentality of how do we move fast, fail fast, scale what works. They have that mentality, and so it's easy to pull people together who've got that experience and worked startups before, succeeded at some, failed at others, and there's no stigma attached to it, right? So I think some of these aspects, I think the US has kind of done well in how it's created that, and I think we've probably got a little bit to learn in some of our markets where we do it less well. So whilst I can't comment too much in India, there's probably something in some of those comparisons that may be useful.
Got it. So now I'll ask some concluding questions. Looking ahead, like say 3 to 5 years down the line, how do you see the finance and say fintech sector productivity going? Like, if it is completely driven by agentic AI, generative AI, and the kind of AI which are still to come, right? Uh, what would be the sector look like, and what would be you doing at that moment?
That's a good question. I suppose this comments on perhaps the way that we see AI changing the way that people work. Um, First of all, we think that whilst the earlier generation of AI tools that were more like chatbots, while they like a Gen AI solution is, they are useful, and most organizations will adopt one. The greater levels of productivity improvement will come when you deal with a workflow, an end-to-end workflow, in the way that agentic AI does. So we're going to see a trend where more and more workflows get automated, and ultimately people move from Q&A tools towards agentic AI tools that deliver workflows. And we will move to a world in which the average knowledge worker has 10 digital workers who are doing work for them. And the future will be a future in which the people make, let's say, do the thinking, make the decisions, do the interpreting, and the agents do the heavy lifting between. The agents will work between people and the systems. So where there's IT systems, agents will update them. They'll take data from them, pass data back. They'll triage tasks. They'll work as a team to get stuff done. And a human will delegate an agent in the future more often than perhaps they delegate to another human, right? And then the agents will then adapt and collaborate and hand off tasks between them, resolve conflicts, quality assure, self-manage, and get the work done. Now, so I think we'll find that in these new ways of working, these new processes that have become AI native, people will design AI native processes rather than we used to talk about digital native processes. People wouldn't talk about AI native processes. In the way that we design work, there'll be processes that recognize that portions of that work will be AI driven, and there'll be portions that are human led. And it's the interesting portions that the humans will lead. But the end process will become much more efficient, maybe 50, 60, 70% more efficient, and releasing time for people to, as I say, do more, do it better, higher quality. I think then what that means is organizations will change. The skills they have to train for, what they hire for, what they recruit for, how they design roles. These will need to reflect this world in which you've got the person doing the value add and you've got the agents doing the heavy lifting. Job descriptions will change. And we'll end up training our workforces to become more AI savvy, AI native, just like we did when the sort of, I suppose, other digital waves came in. So I think for us, we will still have the domain specialists that we have. They're highly valued by our clients. And I can't think of a single example where a client has said, we don't want your people because you as many people because you've got AI tools now, so we don't need as many people. I hear all of the time, we love your people. If we let them have the AI tools in the way that we agree, then can I ask them to do these other tasks as well? So we'll end up with a wider range of work that Acuity does. Will be deeper and more impactful than we even are today. But we will still have our people because they will stay in the loop. It's just they'll become technology enabled, supercharged people rather than just people with 20 years experience in the bank and therefore understand how banks operate.
Okay. So while we have talked about like a lot of pros and like how it is gonna benefit and everything, so if I have to like kind of stretch and also kind of push you a little bit, if you can tell like a couple of cons, like what are the we know the hits of agentic AI, but what are the misses in terms of where it's lacking, and if you want to like if you have something that you think these are the two categories it could do much better where you are you think that this is like there is a area of an improvement over there.
Yeah, it's a good question. And, agentic AI, I suppose, is a bit like you know, a, you know, a sort of university student today, right? It's showing great potential, but actually it's still not sort of got all the experience that you'd want it to have, right? you can see it's going to be great, and you put your money behind it, but you know it's got to mature a little bit. So we recognise that, and so the solutions that we're building, we're actually still, we're still leveraging our 6,500 analysts to test and to train and to adapt and improve. And initially, we're just working with our clients on a sort of a partnership basis, because we want to, for the solutions to be truly sort of road tested. And I think that's something which all the firms that are focusing on agentic AI, they're having to do, right? Or they'll be wise to do. We're undoubtedly get to a point where you've got 60-70% automation in many processes. But if you don't sort of accept that there's a learning curve here, then you might have some missteps on the way. And we accept there's a learning curve. Now, I think that in terms of the, what you'll find is that there's a sort of real expertise to work out how do you get these agents who've got specific roles that you train them to be experts at to work together effectively and in a way that delivers the best outcomes. You might find initially, for instance, that they're not being used in an optimal way, and you don't get quite the lift that you think you should get, right? And so there's going to be quite a lot of fine tuning, I suspect, as time goes by. Now, the other aspect is what are the agents not good at today? They're not yet good at seeing things. When I say that, I mean that if you had to get an agent to update SAP with some information, generally today they can't easily click through the menu structures to find where to put that information, because they're good at data and words, good at getting better at numbers, but they can't yet see. Now, that whole visual AI is coming. There are some really great examples in startups today that can demonstrate how that will work, and that journey is coming. But if you had to say, where is it immature today? Where's agentic AI immature today? It's immature because it can't yet see, but actually it can't read a screen and work out where their menu structure is and how to go through it, for instance. It can't browse the web in the way that you or I would. But that is coming too. But that will take a good couple of years to mature, in my view, even if it starts to become something soon.
Okay, and this is my last question to you. What are the three industries you think are going to be AI proof? These are the three sectors I think AI is not going to make any difference over
Well, first of all, what makes something more AI proof is the starting point for that question, right? And the things that make it more AI proof are where there's lots of human judgment involved, there's lots of human relationships involved, there's people interaction, there's lots of sort of unstructured data that isn't just, can't easily be sort of interpreted without, a person really thinking it through. And it's work that isn't repeatable. In this, it tends to be quite custom and unique and different every time. I often say that it's very hard to find any sort of white collar work, professional work that you couldn't automate with AI. Very hard to find anything you couldn't automate with AI. But actually, the majority, there's no business case to do so, because it would cost you more money to automate than it would save you by doing the automation, because the AI has got costs and people's time costs money. And so if you do something twice a year, there's probably no business case to automate it with AI just because you can. And so if you start to apply those, I think what you'll find is it's not that any industry is safe, if you like, from the impact of AI, or hasn't got great AI opportunity the way I'd see it. But there are portions of work carried out in every industry that won't go quickly to AI because they are more judgment based. And so in, for instance, financial services, in there's portions of the deal lifecycle when you're bidding for a company that you can automate. But there's also portions where it's about human judgment, right? It's about your experience. And, have you seen leadership teams like this before? And, has the leadership team has got the strength to be able to adapt and those human judgments, they will stay, right? And so I think you'll find that there's portions of every industry that don't adapt, don't get heavily AI impacted, because of the human nature of them, or because there's no business case to do so. And then you get the repetitive work in every industry that does get automated. So I'm sorry I can't give you 3 industries that are safe, because I'm not sure there are any. Or as I'd look at it, every industry's got great opportunity.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for taking your time. I know it's early morning for you. And today I think I got a good crash course on Agentic AI and different aspects of it. I hope I asked you a few relevant questions. Thank you so much. And I'm sure a lot of people will definitely learn from it, and it's going to be of great value. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for your time. It's been you've asked great questions. Thank you very much.
Have a great day ahead.
And yourself. Thank you.